At Memphis Motorsports parked on gray and rainy. But by mid-morning, the NHRA track drivers were out grooming the quarter mile. As the sky cleared, loyal Memphis drag racing fans began to fill the pits and grandstands. They knew that the drivers in the Sportsman classes were poised to put on a spectacular show here at the Autolite Sports Nationals. Top alcohol dragsters are not only the longest cars you'll find in NHRA Sportsman racing, they often provide the closest side-by-side competition you'll find on the drag strip today. This beautiful car belongs to Roger Prim from Nevada, and Roger will tell you the most important and abused part on the engine is that supercharger right up there on top. Hello everyone, I'm Steve Evans, and welcome to our coverage of the Autolite Sports Nationals from Memphis, Tennessee. Now Roger and crew have been nice enough to unload their spare blower, put it over here so we can have a good look. Drag racers started using superchargers about the mid-50s. They were right off of GMC diesel trucks. They were called a 671. That meant six-cylinder engine, 71 cubic inches per cylinder, and they were about so long. Drag racers always want more. 6 to an 871, to a 1071, to a 1271, to a 1471. NHRA said, stop. That's it. No bigger blowers. Now, originally, they were stock part. These are all custom made for racing. Here's what's interesting, though. They spin the supercharger 40% faster than the engine. So at the finish line, those impellers are whirring around in there at about 16,000 RPMs. That's the high-pitched whine you hear when these cars race. And you've got to have one of these, right, Brock Yates, to be competitive in top alcohol dragster and funny car?
Well, Steve, you're absolutely right. It's standard issue on Pat Austin's top alcohol funny car that was the champion car last year in Winston competition. But a lot of other guys have tried to run without blowers in alcohol competition. It just doesn't work really that successfully. You got to have a blower. But the interesting part about the blower is that it's obviously connected to the engine, and it's driven by the engine off a crankshaft pulley up through this drive belt. In fact, it takes about 200 horsepower to run a Roots-type blower, as you see on this automobile. And the key component here is this drive belt. Now, this drive belt's built by Gates Rubber. It's actually an over-the-counter item used in all kinds of industrial applications. This particular belt is enormously strong. It's got a Kevlar lining in it, and these unbelievably powerful engines drive these belts, and sometimes you'll see them break, but not so much because of the failure of the belt, but because of the tensioning that sometimes is put on them and the enormous power impulses that go through these engines. This pulley up here on top of this blower, for example, gets about 3,000 pounds of downforce on it when this engine's running. That means it's like kind of hanging a small Buick on the front of this pulley. So this 2,300 horsepower engine is really hard on belts, so you want to have the setup just right, and it can be mighty expensive when it doesn't work. But that isn't the only thing in drag racing that's expensive. And for more on the cost and another kind of racing that we're going to see here, let's go to our pal, Big Daddy Don Garlitz.
Well, Brock, the third class that we're going to cover today is Competition Eliminator, and you are absolutely correct about the cost of alcohol racing. Let me give you a little history. Alcohol racing was conceived because of the high cost of fuel racing and guys that wanted to run dragsters. Well, it didn't take them long to raise the price of that class to astronomical levels. So they conceived Competition Eliminator. We're here in David Rampy's pit, and we're looking at a car that costs about $80,000 to build, of which $40,000 of that is in the engine compartment alone. These cars perform almost as well as pro stocks, turning the quarter in about a second and a half less. Then we have the body, and this body is called an altered. It's a fiberglass body, and it's very expensive time they put all the computers and all the stuff in it. Now, if you want to go racing in this class and you want to save a little money, you can get a roadster. They only cost about $40,000, and beyond that, a little less expensive, an econo dragster. And today we're going to see all of these cars, the roadsters, the dragsters, the altereds, all competing side by side, and we'll see how they fare. Well, it's getting time for alcohol dragster. Let's go back to Steve.
Hey, thank you, Big Daddy. Hey, can't put a price tag on fun, you know what I mean? This is the second round of alcohol dragster competition. The first round was raced yesterday. 16 cars started. We have 8 left at this point. And Big Daddy, I've noticed some of the teams, they kind of like this high humidity. They know how to tune for it. Others, particularly cars from the western United States where it's drier, they hate it.
That's right. This is an eastern car race because we have lots of humidity in the east. And when the westerners come back here and run in this kind of weather, we got them.
All right, there is Bill Barney. We just saw him in the Castrol GTX Dragster. Barney has moved west to east. I mean, changed his home, his shop, everything from Sacramento, California to Knoxville, Tennessee to minimize the travel, be closer to a lot of the events.
Well, it's too far to go back to Sacramento all the time, and there's not a lot of racing up in that part of the country.
No, there isn't, but he's one of the guys that is having to adapt to the humidity. And I mean, it's sticky outside, even though it's not really all that hot. He is up against Bubba Sewell from Spring, Texas. 7 or 8 years ago, Bubba rattled out 3 national event victories in a row, but it's been a long, dry spell since. Bill Barney, we were just talking about Barney. He currently leads the Winston points in the category in this still young season.
Well, Bubba Sewell comes into this race #1 qualify. He's certainly the car to beat at this point.
And he has been on the divisional level as well. He has a win and 2 runner-ups so far this year. So 2 of the best ones here in round number 2. Far lane is the Texan. Near lane is the Tennessean from California, if that makes any sense. RPMs come way up. And Bubba, the #1 qualifier, foul starts and left a red light on the tree. It means he left too soon. Bill Barney saw it and shut it off, and apparently wasn't so concerned with lane choice as he was with saving his equipment.
That's very interesting that he sees that he's more interested in the equipment than the lane choice. That goes to show you that a little less power makes a lot of difference. As we watch the replay, we see that Bubba Sewell didn't leave all that much too early, but they're cutting the lights real close, and if you do that, you've got to expect a red light once in a while. Brock is with Bubba Sewell at the far end.
Bubba, we know how disappointed you got to be. #1 qualifier and take a light, but I guess it happens to everybody sooner or later in their career.
Oh, yeah, I just screwed up. No excuses. Left too soon.
I guess there's nothing else to say.
No, not really. Just better luck next time, maybe.
Yeah, well, we're sorry you're out so soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bubba is just disgusted with himself to qualify #1 and then shoot yourself in the foot right off the starting line. This is the pit area of Chuck Cheeseman. Later on, we get to alcohol funny car competition. He'll be racing Jackie Stidham. And I'll tell you then why they don't call Chuck Mr. Lucky. Stay with us from Memphis. Welcome back to Memphis Motorsports Park and the NHRA Autolite Sports Nationals. I'm Steve Evans along with Big Daddy Don Garlitz and Brock Yates. We are still in the second round of alcohol dragster racing. And here's another good pair. Interesting. Roger Prim, a veteran, versus Tony Pedregon, who is pretty much a rookie. We're looking at Prim over there, who won the Arizona Nationals earlier this year. That was his first national event victory. And the fella he's racing, Tony Pedregon, well, he may be fairly new, but I'll tell you what, it definitely runs in his family. His father, Frank, his late father, Frank, was a terrific nitro racer. His older brother, Cruz Pedregon, has raced these alcohol dragsters and nitro dragsters as well. That is young Tony Pedregon backing up in the near lane. And you can see that orange bag around the supercharger. That's required by NHRA in case there's an explosion to keep all the parts and pieces inside that bag. Tony Pedregon from Gardena, California. He qualified #6 at a 6:16, and he beat Mike Burns in round #1. Now in Gardena, poker is legal. Where Roger Prim is from, anything's legal. In fact, one of his sponsors is a casino just outside of Las Vegas where I've occasionally made a donation. So Roger Prim is not a gambler, though. Big Daddy up the starting line. He likes to see green.
Well, these cars are almost as fast as the fuel dragsters and faster than they were a few years ago.
Oh, you bet it. It's a terrific race here. The youngster on the near side not quite up to the challenge of Roger Prim. Prim drops Pedregon with a 609 to a 617 and a speed of 226.18 miles an hour to a losing 222. Let's go down to Don Garlitz on the starting line with a winning crew chief, Terry Manzer.
Not too bad on this surface out here today.
Yeah, I don't think the surface is quite as tricky as we're making it out to be. Just all the conditions together, the weather and everything's making it real touchy. But we'll try.
In replay, I think you noticed that Roger Prim by no means was gambling on the lights. In fact, after seeing Bubba red light, he let the young Tony Pedregon get a bit of a starting line advantage, confident in his power, and he had all he needed. That 609 to 617 indeed proved that. Now, according to National Dragster, the drag stats column, Roger Prim has the highest average top speed of any alcohol dragster in the country, and there we saw it pay off, 226 miles an hour.
Well, Roger, look good from here, a 609. And how's that sound to you?
Well, it's picking up a little bit. We have to see what Datweiler and Conway are going to do.
What's that?
Well, we'll see how quick they're going to go. They might go a little quicker than that.
You don't think a 609 is going to win this deal?
No, I don't. We're we're from the West Coast. We're having problems with this humidity, not only physically, but the motor doesn't like it. So we're just gonna have to play it by ear and see what happens.
Go get him.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roger.
Well, I'll tell you, I thought a 609 was pretty impressive for these guys, Big Daddy.
I certainly did too, especially considering how much moisture's in there. You know, these engines don't run on water. They run on alcohol and oxygen. And when you put water in the air, you don't have as much oxygen.
Nope, you sure don't. The nice thing about the alcohol dragster class 2 is you'll see a variety of engines. Primarily, you find the Hemi, but occasionally you'll run into a big black Chevrolet, and there's one right there for Bill McCornack of Lexington, Kentucky.
Also, you find a lot of Oldsmobiles out here, and some of those have a nice new head manufactured for alcohol racing, so it makes it interesting.
Earl Datweiler had a single in round 1. Amy Falk couldn't show in the staging lane, some kind of mechanical problem. And McCornack, who qualified number 7 at a 6:24, beat Eddie Ballman in round number 1. Based on Datweiler's qualifying number of 6.08, you got to like the yellow and black car in the far lane, and this one, Big.
You sure do. That means McCormick is going to have to really get after that starting line and squeeze that tree to try to get an advantage if he's going to hold him off.
Well, he got a little bit of an advantage, and he's running right with him. Whoa! Datweiler got a real scare there, and it wasn't a case of McCormick stepping up and running better. Datweiler slowed down to a 6:23. The losing number for McCormick is 6.27. Let's go to Don with the winning crew chief, Todd Datweiler.
Well, you're in there, but it's a 6:23. You got to pick that thing up some.
Yeah, it looked like it shook tires a little bit there in first gear, so we'll have to figure that out and go after for the next round. Thanks.
Well, Big Daddy, he kind of ended that interview, didn't he? A man in a hurry. He needs to make some adjustments to that car. Let's watch it in the far lane and see if you can see where it shook the tires and lost some elapsed time. Here it comes down the racetrack. Right about in there is generally where they shake. Couldn't really visually see it, but you can bet the driver, Earl Datweiler, felt it.
Well, I noticed one other thing. It strode a little smoke out of it just as he stepped on, so possibly he had a ring in there that wasn't just right, and that could have knocked his power down.
Well, normally they do not disassemble these alcohol engines between rounds. We may see Datweilers come apart, though. Here's our next pair, Don Blackshear versus Tom Conway. And Tom Conway has already won 2 divisional events in what NHRA calls Division number 4, and that's the Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico area, and more. Right now, let's go down to the far end of the racetrack and see what Brock can find out from Earl Datweiler.
Well, Earl, you got the win light, but it was a 6:23, and I'm sure you're going to want a little bit more than that out of this.
Yeah, that's not fast enough here. It's Roger Prim on a 6:09 right in front of me. We're going to have to, we need some speed and some ET.
Humidity seems to be bothering some of the guys today. Is it tough with the setup today?
I wouldn't think so. I don't think it's that much different than yesterday afternoon. The sun comes out here, and I think it's basically the same thing. We just got to go back and figure out what we did wrong.
Well, we know you figured out. All the best.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, there you have it, both ways. Roger Prim worried about the humidity. Datweiler, who has lived in it all his life, could much care less. Our next pair, fired and ready, burnouts completed. Don Blackshear versus Tom Conway.
Blackshear, you know, he had a single in the first round, and he didn't run all that good 6:17, so you can bet they're working on it, trying to get this car up to performance so they can face people that are running these 6.0s.
And I'll tell you, Tom Conway's a heck of a story. Conway's a lot like you, Big Daddy. He's an auto mechanic. He can weld his own chassis together, builds his own engines. He and his wife get about everything done they have to. They're out of Seminole, Oklahoma. And this guy, whose picture looks more like a linebacker than a drag racer, Don Blackshear, he had a bye run in round number 1, but he qualified with a very strong 6:14. In fact, on paper, these two guys, if you compare their qualifying number, are 0.04 of a second apart.
Well, that'll mean a good race, and it'll also mean both drivers will be very, very sharp on the tree.
Oh, and they were. Terrific reaction time by both drivers. But it is Blackshear. You'd have to call that a minor upset. Blackshear at 6:06, 228 miles an hour. Oh, based on the times, Conway had a serious problem. A 6:22 to only 2:01. Let's go to Don with Bill Blackshear.
Well, 6:06, very good.
Well, we've been struggling all weekend. We put the rods out in the first qualifying session, so we've been sneaking up on it, but that's pretty good. We'll keep running that all day. We got to get there. Thank you.
That's about the worst thing that can happen to any engine in any form of motorsports. When you put the rods out, that means you have completely blown up an engine. You have knocked the sides of the block out. You probably ruined the crankshaft, maybe the camshaft, the most expensive thing that can happen. But here, everything stayed together. And Blackshear defeats Conway in round number 2. That'll be good news to the other competitors who've been whipped by Conway so much over the last couple of years. Conway got a little bit sideways right there, Vic. That hurt him.
Sure did. He just barely kept that car under control, but that was all it needed for Blackshear to move out in front and take the win.
So the pairings, the final 4 among the alcohol dragsters will find Bill Barney racing Blackshear, and Blackshear has the lane choice over Barney, a 606 to a 992. Second pair is Datweiler versus Roger Prim. Prim has the lane choice with his fine 609 elapsed time. And a day that started out as a minor monsoon has turned out to be darn pleasant to the fans in the stands and Brock Yates.
Well, Don, you upped the ante a little bit, a 606. Got to feel pretty good about that.
Very good. That's the best run for me with the Gennaro Pavers car. We knew we had a tough run with Tom because yesterday he ran 606, and we broke a motor here early in qualifying, put a new motor in the car, and we gradually every run stepping it up. Last night we freshened everything up. Mike Cool came over, went over the blower force, and it went right down through there.
Just like electric. You think a 606 can take it here?
Possibly. The racetrack's a little marginal out there, about 150 feet out or so. If we can keep the clutch combination just right, I think we'll be real good.
All the best.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Just like his crew chief, thinking ahead to that next round already. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the NHRA Autolite Sports Nationals. We're in Bill Barney's pit area. He's going to face Don Blackshear in the top alcohol dragster Final 4.
But that'll be coming up in just a little while. First of all, already rumbling, pulling out of the staging lanes to the starting line are the alcohol funny cars. This is also round number 2. And Don, it doesn't get better than this. 2 drivers, they're the only 3-time Winston World Champions in the category.
Yeah, this is very, very professional end of this particular part of drag racing.
All right, and here is Pat Austin, who has won the last 3 national events and 2 divisional events, one at Atlanta and one at Rockingham, and he's up against the beautiful Jolly Rancher car of Brad Anderson. And these families compete more than just on the racetrack. They are both in the business of selling racing parts, cylinder heads, all sorts of things, and that gets in the way once in a while in this relationship.
Yes, it does, because they want to sell the parts, and sometimes, you know, they'll make a part and it's real good and they don't want to really sell it.
Pat Austin from Tacoma, Washington, along with his father Walt and his brother Mike, run this alcohol funny car, one of the most successful ever. This man preceded them with all of those headlines, though. Brad Anderson, Laverne, California, one of the smartest guys I have ever met in any form of racing.
I used to run the Brad Anderson cylinder heads myself. Look at those clouds coming up in that sky. We're going to might have some more moisture this afternoon.
Well, the humidity keeps changing, whether the sun is out or the sun is in. You've got to be Willard Scott as well as Brad Anderson to figure things like this out. Well, Pat Austin says, come on, Brad. Bad Brad, as they call you. Let's go race. You see his crewman bringing him forward into those beams for that very delicate process. Pat Austin getting comfortable in the car and making sure that the steering is okay. Brad Anderson on the far lane. He just wants to beat this kid so bad every time they race. Pre-stage, stage, RPMs just go so high you wonder how the crankshafts stay in the motors. It's Austin away. Anderson trying to catch him, but no hope. Pat Austin falls off. Really, a 627 is a miserable run for him. For Brad Anderson, well, it was even worse. A 6.49. Let's go to Don Garlett's down on the starting line with Walt Austin, Pat's dad.
How about that performance? Okay, you satisfied with that?
Well, we're probably satisfied with everything but the tire shake. It's a little scary, that run. A little shook up about it, right?
Concerned about his son, as any father would be, and that's where that elapsed time went, up in tire shake. So Walt Austin hoping that when he gets down to the other end, Pat doesn't have a headache or some physical problem. The shake can do that, can it, Don?
Yes, it did. It's hit me pretty hard several times, and that's one of the hardest things to correct. You can usually tune your car up to get more power, but sometimes it's real difficult to get the shake out of it.
Okay, before the next pair of cars, let's go to Brock at the far end.
Well, Pat, we got you to 27. You got by Anderson, and better news is it looks like you got a bye run next round.
Yeah, it looks like we're going into the final if we don't screw up or do something stupid the next round. But, is there anybody from Goody's around, man? I need some headache medicine. That was a bad deal. I kind of thought that he'd get out of shape and do something funny, but I didn't think we were gonna, because we usually don't do that against him. We usually run our best number, but I think the track is playing a little havoc with us right now, and I think that it's going to be a tricky racetrack from here on out.
That's what everybody seems to think. And what do you think it's going to take to win this thing?
to get there before the other car. I know that.
that helps.
I think it's just going to take a matter of using our experience, and hopefully it'll work for us this time. It has in the past, and we got the best crew chief in the business, so.
A 27 probably ain't going to do it, is it?
No, it's going to take an O. He's going to take some kind of an O to win the race.
Okay, well, go get him.
We'll get it.
Okay.
When a former all-star high school athlete like Pat Austin wants a Goody's headache powder, you know he took a pounding inside that car. We're looking head-on at the Terry Mullins Oldsmobile bodied car. His Traders crewman backing him up, making sure he's in those hot, sticky rubber tracks. Terry Mullins from Oak Ridge, Tennessee, has not yet scored on the NHRA national event scene nor the divisional scene. He's looking for a breakthrough. Same could be said of Vern Mose from Des Moines, Iowa. Vern has been around drag racing as long as I've been aware of this activity.
Well, both of these cars ran 6:16, winning their first round, so that means very, very close competition.
And in that first round, it was Mullins over Jerry Gully, while Vern Mose disposed of Burl Brown. Right now, they're just worried about each other, Motes and Mullins. The Oldsmobile funny car body, very popular for its aerodynamics. An awful lot of teams use them, both nitro and alcohol-wise. Oh, a big advantage for Mullins. But here comes Motes. Whoa, he got him. Vern Motes, Des Moines, Iowa, 6:17. To Mullins, 6:29. Mullins probably didn't see Motes until about, well, 3/4 of the way down the track. Here's Don with crew chief Bob Massey.
Well, pretty good. A little smoke out of them tires.
Yeah, a little smoke, but not bad for that lane. We're awful happy with that. Now we just got to see if we can get by this next one.
Okay, well, while you're figuring that out, we'll take a look at how you got through the last one. Car in the near lane, Mullins gets a nice hole shot, almost 1/10 of a second. Vern Motes, there's that little bit of tire smoke that Bob Massey was talking about. It's at this point that a real veteran like Motes gathers it up and says, I'm not beat yet. If I do everything right, shift this car right, steer it right, I can still beat this guy, and beat him he did. A great job by Vern Motes. Down at the far end is Brock Yates to talk to the veteran from Iowa.
Oh, Vern, onward and upward with a 17.
Oh, that's pretty good for us, under the conditions the way they are.
Everybody says the racetrack's getting a little strange. Do you find it in that way?
Yeah, it has been. We've been trying to simmer the car down a little bit to see if we can get it down the track, and it did pretty good that. I've just seen Austin's win a 20-some, so we usually gauge things by them, too.
Yeah, you're underneath him, so that helps.
Okay. We'll try to tune her up a little bit more for the next round.
Okay, go get him.
Thank you.
Well, that nice countenance belies a very tough customer. Vern Motes survived one of the worst funny car crashes I ever saw to race again. Here we're looking at the bids of Earl Datweiler as he gets his dragster ready to face another tough customer, Bill Barney, the top alcohol dragster Final Four. Stay with us from Memphis. We're back in Memphis for the NHRA Autolite Sports Nationals. I'm Steve Evans with Big Daddy Don Garlitz and Brock Yates. We're about to see yet another alcohol funny car race between Chuck Cheeseman and Jackie Stidham. Now, children, I know I promised you a story earlier, and I never disappoint. Why they don't call Chuck Cheeseman Lucky Chucky is because even though two-car collisions on the drag strip are pretty rare, Chuck has had 2 of them, neither one his fault, recently. That's tough. He needs a break, Don.
You bet. And, you know, having 2 accidents like that, I bet you wonder if somebody's hunting him.
All the years you raced, how many times did you have a 2-car accident?
I did have one. It was my fault.
Ooh, Big Daddy. I bet it's not in the book. Here's Chuck Cheeseman. He's from Columbus, Ohio, and you can see by his expression he's about at it. Jackie Stidham from a town I can't pronounce in Oklahoma is a very quiet young guy that carries an awful big stick when he gets in this funny car. But Cheeseman in fact, Cheeseman is the #1 qualifier. The car over in the far lane at 6:03. He had a bye run in round 1. Now let's hope that Cheeseman doesn't have the same misfortune that the #1 qualifier in alcohol drags did. Remember Bubba, the big red light. Look at that car just rock on the tires, Big.
Yeah, sometimes those buys don't help you either.
That's right. You don't really take advantage of all the opportunities you might if you were racing somebody. But Chuck Cheeseman wins this one in a romp at 6.06. That's only 300ths off his best of the event, and the weather was far better than. A big speed, 228 miles an hour. Under these conditions, that is mighty, mighty fast. Here's the pairings for Alcohol Funny Car Final Four. It will be Vern Mutz versus Chuck Cheeseman. Cheeseman has the lane choice, and Howie does. The second pair, well, it's really not a pair. It's a single for Pat Austin, just due to an odd number of cars being in the class of this kind of eliminations. It just kind of works out that way. Well, all of the guys still in competition back behind the grandstands over there in the far side in the pit area, flogging these things, trying to find just a little bit more performance, 100th here, 100th there. That's all you can ask for in these kind of classes. Right now, let's go down to the far end to Brock Yates, who has found a man who might be a little happier now.
Okay, Chuck, an 06, which is not bad. That low ET for this round at least, and sets you up pretty well.
Yeah, we just stuck a new blower on it, and after yesterday, shook his brains out, so we stepped on it pretty good, but his stem's pretty good, so everything's coming together.
I'll tell you what, maybe an 06 might win this deal.
Well, you know, that kid in that green car, you never can count him out.
Absolutely true. You got some serious players up against you, but race car, no shake, ran pretty well.
Right lane's a little bouncy. We didn't have lane choice that time. The right lane was a little bouncy. I'd rather had left lane, but it, you know, a little bit of shake, but it was okay.
We'll have lane choice next round.
I think.
Congratulations.
All right, here is the third Sportsman category we're showing you today. It is called Competition Eliminator, and believe me, it will live up to its name. It is highly competitive, and it features a wide variety of cars, like David Nickens right there with his C-altered Oldsmobile. He is up against Wayne Henderson. Henderson has an A economy dragster. You say that Olds can't run with that dragster. Well, it can when NHRA gets through handicapping them, Don Garlitz.
That's right, Steve. NHRA has calculated an index for each one of these classes, and the start is staggered accordingly.
That's right. David Nickens from Houston, Texas, in the engine business. A lot of the comp eliminator runners use his motors. He's never won a Winston championship, but lots of individual events. He won't be too intimidating to Wayne Henderson in the dragster. He qualified number 5. All right, now here's the tail of the tape. The C-altered has an index of 845. The dragster of Henderson, 765. Do the subtraction, and you have a handicap head start for Nickens of exactly 0.8 of a second, and that is about a light and a half on the Christmas tree. They are half a second apart.
And it even goes beyond that. That car gets so far out in front of you, it's terribly intimidating to leave ahead of your green light.
Oh, absolutely. And here, reaction time's just as important. The driver who runs it closest to his index has lane choice in the following round. Gorgeous light by Nickens, a disaster for Henderson. Henderson tried to win it with a whole shot and wastes away this particular run. So Nickens advances on that red light. He runs an 809 on his index of 845. So you can see how bad they punish it. Index is what NHRA feels a car in the class, properly driven, properly built, should run. A lot can run way under it like Nickens, and a lot can't even get close to it if they're not correctly prepared. There you can clearly see that Henderson, that was a calculated risk on his part. He figured that was the only way to beat Nickens.
Well, David, that can a little bit easy there. Red light. Did you see it on the other side?
Well, when I left the starting line, I looked up and saw you had red lighted, but we're working on our performance down the track. Car's been on a string this weekend. Fortunately, we qualified number 1. And what we're trying to do this weekend is win this race for the World Championship, and hopefully the power we've got from the shop and for Castro, we can do that.
Go get them.
Thank you very much.
There has not been a repeat winner in comp in National Event Racing this year. He could be the first one. I think you can hear in his voice how badly he wants to win at the first ever championship. In the Verdon Moats pit area, well, they're taking care of some brake business. We'll be right back. We have just a few seconds before Competition Eliminator continues, so a quick word about NHRA Now, presented by Castrol GTX. It's a 24-hour drag racing information line with the latest information on your favorite drivers and events. So call 1-900-468-NHRA. You'll be billed by your local telephone company. It's the best way I know of, other than watching our programs, to keep up with NHRA Championship drag racing. Now, if you own a car like Scott Wilcox A-Stock Modified, you say, wait a minute, smoking the rear wheels. That's a front-wheel drive car. It was from Detroit. The A-Stock Modified rules allow you to make a rear-wheel driver out of it.
And that is the most inexpensive way to go competition eliminator racing, if that's what you want to do.
Well, John Polk of Tulsa, Oklahoma has chosen another route, and that is a 6-cylinder D economy dragster, a V6. Neat little car. Scott Wilcox out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for challenging with the Detroit Iron, greatly modified. Now, Wilcox, a super modified, you can see the index, 935. His opponent in the 55. So Wilcox will get exactly the same head start as David Nickens did. 0.8 of a second. And boy, in the sport of drag racing, 0.8 of a second, you need a calendar.
Well, it's like light years.
Oh, unbelievable. Look at that gorgeous little dragster. That's the kind of machine I was always partial to when I was dabbling around with these hot rods, lightweight, underpowered little dragsters. Didn't scare me to death. Got a big, wide front track on it for good control. All right, now, the equalizer here, I know it's punishing to have to wait, but if the other guy red lights, you won. Not the case. It appears that Mr. Wilcox not going to give it away that easily. He's going to make John Polk earn it if he can. Yes, it is Polk, and he won it on reaction times. He was 0.09 of a second quicker off the mark than was his opponent. An 8:14 at 161 miles an hour. Drags a little faster than I thought it was. It might scare me to death.
There we see it. What patience for John Polk. He was not intimidated by that 0.8 of a second head start that Scott Wilcox had. He just waited for his green and went down there and ran him down. And I'll tell you, it was close at the end. He needed that good reaction time that he had at the starting line. He might not have beat him.
Well, I'm sure there was a point there Scott Wilcox said, I got this one in the bag. Not so. Right, Brock?
Well, John, you worked the lights really perfectly, and the little Buick V6 worked perfect, too.
Well, we had a good smooth run that time, and just real lucky to be here.
You got a great hole shot.
Well, I didn't know what he'd run. I saw we was running him down, so just kept hoping. It was real close at the end.
Good job.
Thank you.
All right, round 3 of Competition Eliminator continues. You can see they do those stationary burnouts using a line lock to hold the front wheel so the car will just sit there and burn rubber, get the tires good and hot. And that procedure works fine if you've got a stock-bodied car with a dragster and those little front wheels and no front brakes on it. You do more of a conventional kind of a burnout. But anyway, these are two beautiful cars. Hans Bustel from Mansfield, Texas, qualified in the number 4 position. So he's got an awfully good shot. As far as David Rampey is concerned, well, he's the big noise in Competition Eliminator, the defending Winston champion, and he will get the head start based on the index. This is 910, Bustel's an 825, 85 hundredths is the difference, and it goes to Rampey, who was a little off the speed in qualifying. The Winston champion only got the 8th spot. But with Rampey, that doesn't necessarily mean an awful lot. Somebody's a lot stronger on race day than he might have been in the earlier qualifying. So let's see if the dragster driver can stand the pressure, wait. Yes, he does. He waits it out. Almost identical lights, no big advantage there. Weaving his way down the course comes Bustel, and I think he got him. Yes, he did. The Winston champ is on the trailer. Bustel 779 on an 825 index. Boy, he hammered it. 171 miles an hour. David Rampey's departing shot an 866 at 156 miles per hour. Now, you know, it used to be even harder, Don, to do this kind of racing before NHRA put the divider into the tree. Now you can't see the lights for the other driver. Until just a few years ago, you had all this clutter of lights, and it was really something.
Yeah, they divided those lights up, Steve, for 2 reasons. Number one, you couldn't take an advantage of the other guy's light if it was real close, and also the other guy's light, if it was far away from yours, didn't confuse you.
Boy, there's a nice finish in comp. Just nosed him out. Bustel over Rampey. And here's a real pretty tan-colored Chevy Lumina. That is Todd Patterson in the near lane, who'll be up against Randy Shepard over on the far side of the racetrack as Competition Eliminator continues. Let's go down to the far end with Brock Yates.
Oh, it's a good show. Car sounded great. You ran great.
Thank you very much. It was a pretty close run. I got a little off to the right, out of the groove, and I got it back in there, and it was real close at the end.
Ended the right way.
Yeah, it sure did.
Congratulations.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right, the blue car we're looking at there in the far lane, that is Randy Shepard. And Shepard has really got his work cut out for him. He qualified in the number 22 spot, and he's up against Patterson, Todd Patterson from Augusta, Kansas. Patterson qualified 20 positions ahead of Shepard. The indexes for the F holder to Patterson, 9 flat. For the B holder to Shepard, an 815. Again, a handicap around 0.8 of a second. So let's see just how this unfolds in Comp Eliminator. Some great racing, some close finishes. Ooh, and we have got a red light. The red light coming from Patterson.
Patterson, remember we told you it was a number 2 qualifier? Well, it didn't mean anything here, as Shepard, the number 22 qualifier, wins it with 790, 174 mile-an-hour clocking. So the B-altered Pontiac Trans Am of Randy Shepard moves on in eliminations. In fact, here are the pairings for the comp Final Four. It'll be Fustel versus Shepard. Shepard will have the lane choice. He ran closer to the index than Fustel did. Second pair, Nickens versus Pope. Nickens will have the lane choice. A huge crowd on hand here enjoying all the action at Memphis Motorsports Park, a super multi-purpose facility, and at its very far end is Brock Yates.
Okay, good show. You ran against a red light, though. You know, the other man.
I noticed that I got to the top end. I saw my wind light come on, but at first I didn't see his red. I tried to just look at my side of the tree and not pay attention to nothing else, but I didn't see his red until I saw my wind light before the finish line. Excuse me.
Everything worked well? Car run well?
We were a little out of shape there. I'm not sure the reason why, but we got out of the groove a little bit, and I pulled it back in, and then it straightened out, and then we were okay. I'm not sure what it ran for ET, but we've been trying to get it to run faster all weekend, and I'm not sure if that was one of them.
You're back in it, though. We'll see you in the next round.
Thank you.
Sure.
You listen to Randy, you understand how difficult the short wheelbase, high horsepower comp cars can be to drive. There's Earl Datwiler trying to get comfortable in that cockpit. He will face Roger Prim in the alcohol Final Four. Welcome back to the NHRA Autolite Sports Nationals. It's time for the Final Four in alcohol dragster. I'm Steve Evans along with Big Daddy Don Garlitz and Brock Yates. And Don, it's hard to describe to people the pressures in one of these alcohol engines. They drive that blower so hard, high compression pistons. The bearings take a real beating in these engines.
Yeah, you saw earlier the guy with the vernier calipers checking the width of the bearings. That's what he was doing. If that bearing was too flat, he knows they got to back something down just a little bit.
And it used to be you could fire the plugs with one magneto. You only needed one plug per cylinder. A lot of them now have the dual magnetos, the dual pump, 2 spark plugs per cylinder. They're running that much alcohol fuel through these engines. All right, it is Roger Prim in the far lane and Earl Datwiler over here in the near lane. The burnouts have been completed, and it's time to race. Prim had the lane choice, and he selected that right-hand side. Oh, that was not so much a hole shot as Datwiler not leaving until day after tomorrow. Roger Prim, almost a perfect light. Datwiler about 0.25 of a second off the light. Prim wins it at 6:11. Let's go down to Don Garlitz with their crew chief, Terry Manzer. He's got to be tickled.
Well, a 6:11, you're in the final.
Yeah, we're going to try to step it up a little bit from that. I think the air is going to be a little better in the final. The track's looking better all day, so I think we'll go a little bit quicker.
You really need an O, don't you?
Yeah, we need an O. It's going to take an O to beat Blackshear. He's really doing good. So.
Well, they're already assuming that Blackshear, I guess, is going to beat Bill Barney, but Mr. Barney, now of Knoxville, Tennessee, may have something to say about that. Blackshear rolls out, and obviously what may be his competition in the final round rates him as a favorite.
Yeah, I've done that myself. I think that's more of a slip of the tongue than anything else.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Look at the narrow little track on that car, Blackshear's car, Don. Do you notice that?
Yeah, it makes it real slick. A little, by putting the wheels together like that, there's less wind resistance.
All right, let's go to Brock at the far end with Roger Prim.
Well, Roger, hole shot, 6:11, put you into the finals. Can't be all bad.
No, I can't. That's pretty good. We traveled a long way for this, so we'll have to see what Blackshear does now.
Any changes in the setup for the finals?
I don't know. I'm going to have to take a look at the computer. And we've been, like I said before, we've been having a hard time with the humidity. And we've been leaning on the motor, and it just isn't coming around yet. So
I think the humidity's backing off a little bit since it front passed through.
Yeah, the wind's been blowing, but I'll tell you, it's still pretty high. It's an 85 or so, so it's still pretty good.
Go get them.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Well, it's too bad that Barney doesn't know that everybody figures Blackshear is going to win, because that'd really tune him up, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. He'd have his game face on the starting line if he doesn't already. And I don't really understand that. Barney has won 2 races this year. I mean, he's leader in the points. Yeah, I guess just looking at the numbers, though, it makes sense. Blackshear has been a little bit quicker consistently the past couple of rounds of racing. And there is the favorite now, as established by the racers, Don Blackshear. Bill Barney, the Castro GTX dragster in the far lane. It is Blackshear away, but not by much. Barney's right there. What do they tell? Oh, there's Blackshear. Blackshear indeed won it indecisively, a 6:09 to a 6:15, 227 miles an hour for the winning car. And understand, under perfect conditions, These cars, on a regular basis, run in the 5-second elapsed time zone.
Well, here we see it. Blackshear definitely takes a starting line advantage over Barney and then has a better performance on top of it. So you put those two things together, Steve, and it's very difficult to lose. Quicker car, quicker reaction time. It's a winner every time.
Absolutely, but Barney at about half track or a little more appeared to be in it and suddenly kind of slowed a little bit and gave the victory away.
Well, Don, a 609, and you know as well as I do, that gives you a lane choice, so that's got to be good news.
Yes, it is. The thing shook pretty bad, the top of low gear out there, so we got to make a little clutch adjustment, try to soften it up through that area. But 609 is still pretty good in this type of atmospheric conditions out here.
You think, is that lane you gonna stay with that lane, or?
Pretty much so. The right-hand lane has a little bump when it goes off the pad, and then there's a bump down there about 1,000 feet, and you kind of want to stay away from that kind of stuff if you can, because it kind of wants to upset the car a little bit.
Well, congratulations. Great pass.
Thank you very much.
Don, isn't it funny? Some drivers want the right lane, some want the left lane. That's the best racetrack you can have when nobody can decide what lane they want.
You bet. I used to love them when they were like that.
Here is David Nickens' pit area. He takes on John Pope in the Comp Final Four when we return to Memphis.
Welcome back to beautiful Memphis and the NHRA Autolite Sports Nationals. We're watching Pat Austin getting ready to take his bye run. We had an odd number of cars here today, so it was figured out by the NHRA that this would be the round where the bye would take place.
What a major break in any kind of competition, Don, to not have to race anybody.
Well, sometimes, but you know, you don't run your car usually as hard when you know you're going to be on a bye, and so consequently, he may not be getting the tuning experience he wants.
You know, let me take just a moment to invite you to become a member of a very special organization, the National Hot Rod Association. For $45 per year, you get 48 issues of National Dragster, a patch, a pen, rule book, and more. And if you order by calling the number on your screen, you'll get a free copy of Diamond P's home video, Drag Racing 90. So call today. There's a man who belongs in NHRA, I guarantee it. That is Walt Austin. He is really a brilliant individual when it comes to the design of race car parts.
Well, they're getting ready to go into the final. They know that's where they're going to go unless they crash the car. So it would be smart to make a very hard run to try to have lane choice and know what you were going to do.
Let's remember how upset Walt Austin was when he saw his young son Pat shake so hard on that car. Let's recall that Pat was looking for pain relief. So if they hope they've eliminated here, along with Pat's brother Mike, you saw giving him the okay sign there, is that tire shake, not only is it abusing the body, it could cost them this event. They've got to try to lose it. Let's watch those rear tires. What should we watch, Don? The whole car?
Yeah, you can see the side panel shake on one of these when the tire shakes. So if the whole car is smooth, you can rest assured the ride was pretty good. Not too bad. Looked pretty smooth to me.
Well, certainly better than it was before. And a 610 for Pat Austin, and the speed is up on that car at 231 miles an hour. Let's go down to Don Garlitz and find out what Walt Austin thought about it.
Can you ever remember when you weren't in the final?
Oh, yes, many. You can't forget those. We've not been in the final, you know, enough times. We're always working for the final.
We wish you the best.
Thank you.
Well, he didn't mention the shake, so obviously he didn't see any, but they didn't get the O that Pat told Brock they felt they would need to win this race.
Well, this will be the last pair in the Final Four, and we'll find out whether they're going to need an O or not in that final round.
Well, here is the beautiful Mopar performance car of Vern Moats. Moats and Massey, the team. They've been together a long time, those two racing partners, and they're a bit of an underdog here. They have not run quite the numbers that their opponent, Chuck Cheeseman, has. Cheeseman has lane choice versus that beautiful 606 he ran in round number 2. And you heard Vern Moats at the time when he ran 617 say, well, that's pretty good for us. Well, that's 11/100ths of a second difference, and that's almost impossible to make up even via the whole shot route. Cheeseman getting the emergency hatch up there, trying to find a little cool breeze to blow through on this very, very humid day. As Brock Yates has said many times, it's the only air conditioning that a funny car has. Speaking of Brock Yates, let's hear from him now.
Well, Pat, the stage is set for number 5 in a row. 610 puts you into the final. Can't be all bad.
That's a lot better than 627. You can just say that we're on the 1-yard line and it's 4th down. There's no time left. Last play of the game. We're down by 1 point. This is where it's coming down to. It's time to put it in the end zone.
It's difficult for me to believe you're an underdog going into this deal.
Well, that kind of puts a little fever to the fire here a little bit. the temperature's rising, and we're going to be there. I think we found our problem. I hope. I'm not going to say we did, but Casper Oil's Dynomax Special is really going to make it to the final.
Okay, congratulations.
Thanks.
Okay.
You can really notice the different attitude of the driver when they've had a smooth run.
Well, his brother Mike Austin has an interesting attitude. He's the only guy I know of that will lie flat on his back and let you drive a golf ball on a tee in his teeth.
Now that's cool.
That's cool, let me tell you. And I'll tell you, old Vern knows he's been down the racetrack far more times than Pat Austin has. He hasn't won as many times, but if you compared their individual runs, it'd be probably 10 times more. But he's about 10 times older. Up against Cheeseman. Everybody seems to think Cheeseman has got the big stick here. Let's find out.
Well, he's certainly the one to watch. He's been running the O's today, and if he can hold that consistency, he'll be tough to deal with.
3 states already. They bring the engines up, slide the clutches into the beams. Good start by both drivers. Oh, but getting close to the center line is Cheeseman. Cheeseman shuts it off. And Vern Modes with a 6.16 at 229 miles an hour will be the opponent for Pat Austin. So at least that mystery is now solved for Mr. Austin. Let's have another look at it, Don. Do you think Cheeseman could have driven out of this?
I don't know. They had a beautiful start. Cheeseman definitely had the advantage. You can see he's ahead there, but he had to get out of it in order to not cross that center line. Now, perhaps he could have got back in it sooner and saved it, but he chose not to do that, and it made Vern Motes the winner.
Well, he also kept it off the wall and out of the other lane, and it's all in one piece. Something to be said for that. The pairings in Top Alcohol Funny Car Finals, Motes versus Austin. As we said, Austin will have the lane choice, a 6.10 to a 6.16. Here's Brock Yates.
Well, Vern, the good news is you're in the final. Obviously, bad news is that Pat gets lane choice. You got a 16 in his 10 against his 10.
Well, it looks like we'll have to tune it up a little better then. I think we can come up a little more time. Pat's always hard to beat, but we'll see what we can do in the next round.
Okay, go get him.
Thank you.
That's exactly what he intends to do. We'll be back with more of the Autolite Sports Nationals from Memphis. Stay with us. We're having a good time. Welcome back to Memphis, home of the Blues and the NHRA Autolite Sports Nationals. Nothing blue in the Don Blackshear pit area. They're all smiles. They have a bit of an advantage over their final round opponent, Roger Prim, when the Top Alcohol Dragster finale does indeed come around. Right now, it's time for the Final Four Competition Eliminator. And it's a terrific contrast between this tire burner of an Oldsmobile, David Nickens from Texas, up against the spindly little lightweight little pocket rocket dragster that we see right here. That is John Polk. And this will be a very close race as far as the handicap, Don Garland's only a 1/10 of a second, almost heads up.
That's right, almost a heads-up race, but a very big contrast in cost. Like you got an $80,000 car sitting in the one lane, and the little dragster's only $35,000. So it's 2 different mindsets there.
And there you can see the index is 855, 845. Nickens this time will be the one doing the waiting by a 1/10 of a second.
But it's hard to say who's having the most fun.
Look, it's not John Polk. He's got a big red light staring him right in the face. He has foul started. David Nickens, whether he crosses the finish line first or second, will be the winner. He beat him twice, actually, Nickens did. 797 for the Oldsmobile at 152 miles per hour. David Nickens goes into yet another final round and earns more points toward what he hopes will be his first ever Winston championship. So hard to believe with all the winning he's done, all the legends of David Nickens, and he's never really won the title.
It can happen, but maybe this will be his lucky year.
All right, and next up, it will be Hans Bustel versus Randy Shepard. This will determine who races Nickens in the final round. That'll be a dubious honor the way he's running. Let's hear from David now.
So, David, into the finals. 797. Red light didn't hurt you a whole lot in the other lane.
Well, it sure did, and I tell you, we're real proud of the performance of the car. Mike and Buddy and Robert's done a great job this weekend, and we've just had tremendous success, and the rest of the deal, I don't know. We'll just have to play it by ear, but it's going to be a pretty tough final, and we're going to give it our best. We need the points for the World Championship.
We'll be watching. Best of luck.
Okay, thank you very much.
Right, David.
He is possessed thinking about that World Championship, and the season is still quite young. Well, I'll tell you, with that kind of dedication, I don't know if they can deny him again.
Sounds like a couple of fuel dragster drivers that I know.
Yeah, one I'm working with right here in Memphis this weekend. You were a lot of laps that you won that third season. All right, the advantage will go to Hans Bustel in the dragster. Believe it or not, he has a slower index than the full-bodied car of Shepard. Again, it's only a 1/10 of a second. tenth of a second, you can just barely snap your fingers in a tenth of a second, but in drag racing it can be an eternity.
Especially when you're tuned in on that tree and you're tunneled in on it and you're just sitting there waiting. It just takes forever.
All right, there's what a tenth looks like on the lights. You can clearly see it, though. Can Fustel stay out in front of Shepard? They're both a little goosey on the racetrack, but it is Fustel by a full car length or more at 777. That's a good ride. 171 miles an hour in that little dragster. That'll get your attention. Shepard departs with a 785. 175 miles per hour. You know, even though they don't have the big raw horsepower the supercharged cars done, they're not easy to drive. It looks like they're pretty loose.
Well, they are. This is exactly what's happening. Think back to my first rear engine car. It was just about that speed in ET, and without the wing, it moved around the middle of the course. Those little cars should have wings. And of course, the altered car, like Nickens has got, it doesn't have the big back wing like the funny cars got. So these cars are actually loose in the center of the course, more than you would think.
And especially the small tires on the dragster. And you're not going to convince him to put a wing on that car because it'd slow it down, dragging through the air. No way. He'll just drive it.
That's right.
So the only piece of bad news for Hans Fustel as we look at the comp final round pairings is that David Nickens ran closer to his index than Fustel did, and David will have indeed the lane choice. Let's go down to the far end. Brock Yates with Hans.
Well, Hans, it's you and Nickens, 777. You had just ran him down in the lights, I understand.
I caught him about three-quarter track, and I never seen him after that. I think I got a pretty good light because I was spotting him, and I left ahead of him. So,
feeling good. Is car running good?
Yeah, it's running pretty well.
Good. Go get him.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back to Memphis Motorsports Park. You're looking at the pit area of Pat Austin. That's his brother Mike getting the Oldsmobile funny car ready for the finals. In fact, only the finals are left in our three featured categories. So right now, let's look back through all of the other Sportsman categories and show you the final rounds. In stock eliminator was Ronnie Cardwell of Ruston, Louisiana, in the 82 Firebird up against Sammy Pizzolatto from Houma, Louisiana. A couple of good Cajun boys, Pizzolatto in the 71 Olds Cutlass. And as you'll see, it was the Firebird in the far lane that had the muscle and stock eliminator on this day. The most restrictive of the Sportsman categories as far as rules were concerned was won by Ronnie Cardwell at 1260, 106 miles per hour in that silver Firebird. Okay, moving along. Next up, it was Super Stock Eliminator featuring Jeff Taylor, the former world champion from Lumberton, North Carolina, the 91 Olds Calais, up against number 7 in the world last year in the category, Jeff Steele of Moline, Illinois. That Steele in the Corvette maybe had this one well in hand until right at the finish line, and Jeff Taylor nipped him. Taylor in the Calais won it at 963, 134 miles an hour. He is the Mid-South Nationals champ in Super Stock Eliminator. Moving along to Super Gas Eliminator, run on that 990 index. It was Ed Fairdekill Jr. of Hollywood, Florida, in the 67 Nova from the far lane. And it was Tom Small from Indianapolis, Indiana, in a 68 Camaro. A red light for Small. Fairdekill went on to win it, even though he ran under the index. Once the other driver red lighted, he was the champion at 988, 134 miles per hour. And behind the Super Gas final came the 1 second quicker Super Top cars that run on an 890 index. And in the far lane, it was Scotty Richardson, Arlington, Texas. In the near lane, Larry Borden of Fort Worth, Texas. Watch Borden in the near lane. That's what a perfect light looks like. .400. But you know what? It still wasn't enough. He ran too quick in 886. The winner, Richardson, who was over the index, which you must be in Super Cup, at 8.92, 142 miles an hour. Well, that was all then. We're about to go to now. And the competition eliminator final round, Don Garlett.
It'll be David Nickens versus Hans Fustel.
And Nickens will have 0.2 of a second advantage over Hans Fustel's dragster. The C Altered Index 845. The C Economy Dragster Index is 825, and that's 0.2 of a second. Now, David Nickens has a chance here to become the first repeat winner of the year on the national event scene in Competition Eliminator. There you see all of the numbers that go involved in making these races as close as they are. The 0.2 of a second will go, not to that man, but to David Nickens. He wishes they went to him.
He'll have to sit there and wait and be calm and cool.
Oh, absolutely. Let's see what happens here. Nickens has been running further under the index also than Bustel has. Nickens not that good a light. Bustel much better. In fact, almost perfect. The little dragster pulls it alongside, but can't get the job done. Talk about a photo finish and competition eliminator. Nickens runs 790, Bustel runs 780, an incredible final run, 172 miles an hour for David Nickens as he wins more of those points he's after.
Boy, Nickens didn't make a very good start, but he had a lot of power in the middle of the course because, you know, how can you give up that much of a starting line advantage and still win? Well, he's showing you how to do it. Just have a good, powerful car through the middle and you can make it up.
And a powerful car that you personally can take credit for. David Nickens and his associates build those powerful comp engines down in Texas, and today he was his own best advertisement. Let's go down to Brock.
Well, David, congratulations. Great pass all day long. Good running, good steady running.
Well, I appreciate it. I tell you, our goal was to come in here and set the pace and qualify one and try to win the race, and I'm telling you, we've done it, and not without the help of my crew guys, Mike and Buddy and Robert and my girlfriend Karina. I tell you, they've done such a job all weekend, and it's been flawless. Our car set the pace, qualified one, and we performed well, and it's the guys in the shop I'm happy for, Castrol and Oldsmobile. And I tell you, we're going to try to take this lead and go right in and finish the year out as a world champion.
Well, we certainly congratulate you. Great start so far.
I thank you very much.
Okay. David Nickens.
And I tell you what, Brock, Nickens loves seeing you down there. The two Sportsman shows you have done, he won both of them, Phoenix and now here. Stay with us. We've got the Thunder and Dragsters and Funny Cars next. We are back with the conclusion of the NHRA Autolite Sports Nationals here at Memphis Motorsports Park. Only 12 seconds of racing remains. The Alcohol Funny Car finale already fired up and burned out, and the Alcohol Dragsters waiting just behind them. Don Garlett's Pat Austin looks awful good in this one.
He sure does, and you notice he's chosen that far lane, and that's the lane that they made that real nice, smooth 610 on the previous run. So I assume that they've stepped the car up just a little bit in hopes of gaining some performance and not shaking.
Well, we've said it before, but it bears saying again as we look in that emergency hole window at Vern Most. Pat Austin has won the last 3 NHRA national events consecutively. Really would like to make it a quartet, so would his dad, Walt. Very close family. They live in Tacoma, Washington, all in kind of the same compound. I mean, not like the Kennedys on the big walls around it, but all their houses are, you can see one from the other, and they play together, they work together, and occasionally, Walt will tell you, they fight together and do that real well, too.
Well, Steve, it takes an occasional fight to keep a relationship healthy. Vern Motes, on the other hand, comes into this round a little bit of the underdog. He doesn't have lane choice. He's been steady all day, but not quite the performance that Pat Austin has displayed here.
Nah, but Vern Motes, he can rise to about any occasion. He's getting tired of the kids dominating the Alcohol Funny Car ranks. But this kid is just likely to do it again. The Castrol GTX Oldsmobile, Vern Motes, Motes and Massey. Motes, a little bit of an advantage. Motes gets sideways, but Motes comes back. Vern Motes has won the Autolite Sports Nationals 6:13. Oh, this is going to hurt Pat Austin to a quicker 6:12. The difference, the margin of victory, write this one down. 3/1000 of a second. That's drag racing.
Vern Motes takes a 200 starting line advantage and gives up about 118. When you take it out to the thousandths, it comes out to 3/1000ths of a second difference between these two cars. Now that's what I call competitive. And that's what the fans came to see, that type of a race. Nobody really likes to see a walk away. They like to see automobiles side by side right to the finish line. And that's what we got in this Top Alcohol final.
I'll tell you, when Motes got sideways about half track, I figured he was all done for. He wasn't about to give up. Let's go to Brock.
Okay, Vern, great race. Whole shot won it for you.
Oh, is that right? I'm sure glad of that because Pat is really tough, and that's what the guys told me. They was looking for a good light, so I hope we got him one.
You squeezed a perfect light, and race car just looked like it ran straight and true the whole way.
Yeah, I ran pretty straight. There was quite a bit of shake in the middle of the track, but I didn't see him till right at the end, so I knew it was real close.
Okay, congratulations. Great
match. We appreciate it.
He calls that pretty straight. There's more than one reason I don't drive those things. That looked mighty. Looked like Steve Kinzer at Knoxville, Iowa to me.
And it was more than pretty close, too.
Oh, buddy. All right, this is it. This will wrap up the Autolite Sports Nationals. A tremendous afternoon of competition here at Memphis Motorsports Park. Everybody's enjoyed every minute of it, except maybe for the rain this morning and the mud in the parking lot trying to go home. But they're not thinking about that right now. They're watching Roger Prim from Reno, Nevada, up against Farrell, Pennsylvania's Don Blackshear. And it was Roger Prim who told Brock Yates quite candidly earlier on today that he didn't like racing in all this humidity. Well, it's been good to him so far, Don.
Well, so far, but Blackshear certainly is the favorite amongst all the racers. But you know, it's not that much difference. There's only 0.02 of a second separating these two cars, and that can easily be made up on the starting line.
Drivers are pretty brave, but so is one of our starting line cameramen, Dave Amon. What is he up to this time? Oh, Amon. He should have been a bullfighter. Okay, Blackshear and Roger Prim, the folks from the west, no doubt rooting for Prim, from the east for Blackshear. These alcohol drags, as they'll come from almost every state in the union. There is no real hotbed of them. They're popular wherever there's NHRA championship drag racing.
Well, each team has tried to get just that little bit more horsepower to get an advantage over the competitor. Let's see if they were able to do just that.
And these are probably the best conditions we have seen all day. The air is cooled off a little bit while the track remains warm. Here we go, the last race of the day, and it's a beautiful start. No one with a starting line advantage at the far end. It is Roger Prim. 6:05 to a 6:07. A good, clean drag race won by horsepower. Speed for Prim, 228. For Blackshear, 227.10. This one is worthy of another look.
It certainly is. Watch these two cars look like they're tied together. Both cars moved exceptionally well. They were prepared properly. We don't see any tire shake. They stay side by side as they move down course. At the halfway mark, they're still pretty much even up. But then Prim begins to make a little move and takes the win just by a breath.
Well, Roger, a 6:05 to a 6:07. You told me all day you were having trouble with the humidity. Now, you can't tell me that you haven't got it figured out a little bit now.
No, I talked to my crew chief. I said, it's okay to hurt some bearings this pass. We've been leaning it. We have an air computer that tells us pretty much what to do. And we've been leaning it 25 thousandths more than what the air is telling us to do. And it's starting to come around finally.
It sure is. Congratulations. Great.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Hey, what's pounding the babbitt out of a few bearings when you can win the NHRA Autolite Sports Nationals here in Memphis, Tennessee? Ever the sportsman, Roger Prim wanders over to console Don Blackshear, the man he beat in the final round. Our congratulations to all the champions, Roger Prim, Vern Motes, and David Nickens. For Big Daddy Don Garlitz and Brock Yates, I'm Steve Evans saying thanks for joining us from Memphis, Tennessee.
The executive producer for American Sports Cavalcade is Harvey M. Palish. Produced and directed by John B. Mullen. Promotional consideration provided for and a fee paid by this special. The American Sports Cavalcade is a presentation of Diamond P Sports.